I'm not going to lie, this phone has changed my view entirely on flip folding phones. And yeah, I'm more surprised than anybody at that. So back in May last year, I picked up the Oppo Find N2 Flip. Now, the Razer 40 released around the same time, but the N2 Flip seemed to be the one to go for. It had the better SoC, it had the better camera setup in particular, and it has the better brand power, so obviously it was being promoted a lot more heavily. The Razer 40 didn't even come into the equation for me, to be perfectly honest. Now, I had a terrible time with the Find N2 Flip, most of all because the hinge, it just didn't want to hold any sort of positioning. So if you wanted to prop the phone up on a table, take a photo, anything like that, it just didn't work. The phone would sort of just snap open or snap shut, depending on which angle you had. So the hinge wasn't impressive at all, and I wasn't particularly a fan of the build, in all honesty. And this was just after I'd tried the Galaxy Fold 4, which I actually really enjoyed. So I don't have an issue with foldables in general. It was just the flip variety that I thought was probably not just suited for me. And to be honest, I was so annoyed. I was so sort of down about the Find N2 Flip that I didn't do any videos on that phone. I posted some photos to social media. That was it. I didn't do a review or anything. So let's talk about why the Razer 40 convinced me otherwise on flip phones, and it comes down to hardware actually. So the most fundamental part of this is the hinge. Now with the Razer, you can have it hold any position that you want. That was my main gripe with the Oppo, and with this, not an issue. I can set it up and prop it up however I want to take a photo or record video. It's really straightforward, works really well, and you never feel like it's going to sort of, you know, snap open, snap close, anything like that. It's pretty fantastic. Something that I found very pleasing with this phone was the fact that it wasn't just a glass sandwich, a glass and metal sandwich. We actually had a vegan leather finish on the outside, which gives the phone an entirely different feel to the Oppo. Now with a flip folding phone, because it becomes so compact, it can be a little bit more difficult to sort of keep hold of. And I always felt like it was going to sort of slip out of my hand, especially when I was unfolding the phone. With the Razer, you don't have that issue because you've got that vegan leather finish, and in this sage green color, it looks so good. So good. Such a nice finish. I wish we'd had this finish on pretty much every phone because it's great. It just gives you that tactile feel that's missing from a lot of phones. So side-mounted fingerprint reader with this phone. It's lightning fast. It's my favorite placement for a fingerprint reader, which is why I like it on the Sony Xperia so much as well. Absolutely perfect. And that's the hardware that you can sort of see and feel. The internals are where it gets a little bit more interesting. And then on the software side as well, one of the reasons why I think it sort of works better than a lot of other phones. So the SoC is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 7 Gen 1. Now this isn't a new SoC, it wasn't new last year. Because this is not as powerful a chip, I didn't actually find there to be much in the way of issues with heat. And the fact that it is a less powerful chip means that the battery drain isn't as high. Now, if you're somebody that uses their phone very heavily and you're doing a lot of gaming, that sort of thing, you might not find that this phone performs as well as others. But if you're after what I think this phone is best designed for, which is as a more of a general communicator type handset, you know, for some gaming it can be fine, but if you go into more intensive games, say you want to play something like Call of Duty, or you know, you're playing something like League of Legends, Wild Rift, it might become more of an issue with the heat generation, and you might get some throttling and more intensive battery drain. The software, though, an absolute joy to use, and it's a bit bare bones. It's a little bit like the Sony Xperia. It's bare bones, but it has their flavor of it. So you've got their little software intricacies, which I thought were quite neat and quite nice. And I actually think, you know, Google, Sony, Motorola, they have very similar skins in the way that they function. But I think I think Motorola makes my favorite. I think it's my favorite version. You've got really cool looking clock widget options, the fonts and the animated wallpapers. It was just really to my liking. And this is going to come down, it's a preference thing, right? At the end of the day, lots of people like One UI, lots of people like how iOS works. I like more of a stock Android experience because it's more fluid, it's faster, and you can just do things quicker. And I think Motorola's got this absolutely nailed down. Even on a 7 Gen 1, which is technically a mid-range SoC, it absolutely flies and it just feels perfect. Now the outer screen is quite small. It's a bit more like what you'd find on a Galaxy Z Flip 4. But it still offers up the ability to check certain information like the weather, message notifications, that sort of thing. There's set quick reply options which you can change up, but most of the time, if you're needing to do anything major, you will have to open the phone up to do it. However, I have a slightly different take on this, is that having something pop up on the outer screen and it be something that you don't necessarily need to reply to straight away or get involved with is actually a really good deterrent from you opening up your phone, going into your phone, then getting distracted by something else, and then getting lost in X/Twitter/Twix for like half an hour before you realize, oh yeah, I need to carry on doing what I was actually meant to do. So for people like me, I actually found it really beneficial because I have a big problem with procrastination and getting stuck on my phone and going on social media for way too long just because I've gone to a message or something else. I've been doing that and then, oh yeah, I've got these notifications on Twitter. It stopped me doing that. I actually didn't go on my phone as much during the day. Some people see that as, well, that's bad because it means you didn't want to use the phone. It's actually putting you off using it. I would argue that was good for me. Again, it comes down to your individual use case, but I'm just throwing that out there. It's kind of strange take, probably, but... And I do really like the fact that with that outer screen, you can still use it as a viewfinder for taking photos. So you can use the main cameras for photos. And we're going to get onto those cameras right now. So I would say that the cameras are the weakest aspect of the phone. That's not to say that the images that you get from the camera aren't usable, because they are. The focus is very good. The main issue for me is that it tends to be more oversaturated. It's more of an oversaturated look, which I guess is more there to sort of appeal to the majority of people that sort of like that vivid sort of Samsung style color profile. But in terms of the hardware, you've got a 64 megapixel main sensor with a 13 megapixel ultra wide, 32 megapixels on the selfie cam as well on the inside screen. But obviously you can use the outer cameras as a selfie camera because of the way that the flip phone works. As I say, the photos can be a bit mixed, but overall it's not bad. I found that skin tones were more of a problem with this phone. What I found really interesting was taking a selfie, and I'm hoping I've got the images here to show you, but the image from the main camera on the rear of the phone was actually, it made me look more sort of puffy and red, which you know, I might look a little bit puffy and red now, to be fair, but let's forget that. It made me look a little bit like that more so, whereas the regular selfie cam I actually thought gave a better looking image, which was pretty strange. So there's some tuning there, I think, with the cameras in terms of like skin tones and things. But other than that, if you could have a look at some of the images here that I've been throwing up, they look great. And I think most people will be perfectly fine with them. I don't think... The thing is, these days, cameras on phones are generally quite good, even on the mid-range. And these are definitely sort of mid to budget range cameras. But on this type of phone, for the type of person that would buy it, I would expect that to be perfectly fine. So the only question I had about this phone after using it for the 2 weeks was, who is this phone actually aimed at? Who is it for? And as I mentioned earlier in the video, as someone who is very much into mobile photography and likes having the best of everything, this isn't the phone for that. This phone clearly wasn't for me, so who is it for? And not forgetting, at the price that it was released at, you can get very, very good slab phones for that price. So for me, this phone is aimed at a more particular group of people. And I think it's what I mentioned earlier, that it's for somebody who wants more of a communicator style device that's less distracting, allows you to just get stuff done, and will do everything you need of it. It's more compact, it's easier to store away, you can keep it out of the way. You can stick it in a shirt pocket if you want to. You know, it's very versatile. But I also think it's something that sort of just blends into the background more. It's not at the forefront of everything that you're doing. I kept it in my pocket more often than not. If I'm using a slab phone and I have to go into the phone to do anything anyway, I'm looking at everything else going on. I get caught up in everything else. I waste more time on slab phones. So the thing for me is that, I'm even tempted to get a flip phone as my main phone, probably a Razer, just because it'll stop me getting as distracted throughout the day. And that can only be a good thing. So for people that just want a super compact communicator that has a fantastic inside screen, lovely build, we've got pretty fast charging as well, and the styling is just fantastic. I love the styling of this phone. I think it's one of the best looking phones out there. The OS is fluid, it's fast. There's no downsides to the actual using of that phone, none whatsoever. I felt it was just, there wasn't really anything that cropped up that I can say, wow, this is terrible. This is actually negative. This is a big downside. None of that. Absolutely none of it. The only thing that I would say is a problem, and that is a general thing for Motorola across the board, is that they need more swift updates in terms of OS updates and security updates. The fact that you can pick up this phone, I think in the UK you can get it for under £600 at the minute. I still think that's a very good buy, and I can easily recommend the Motorola Razr 40 if, as I've said before, you're after that particular type of communicator device just wants to blend in the background. So yeah, I'm now a fan of flip phones thanks to Motorola, and hopefully soon we'll have the Razr 40 Ultra in to review, and we'll see how we get on with that. For those of you that have used a flip phone, please get in touch, let me know your experience, how you got on with it. I'm just interested in hearing from others in regards to this form factor, because, like I say, this is fairly new to me. I've only used a couple of devices. Some of you might have only used one, some of you none. And I just think it's interesting to get those comments there, and then people watching the video can also refer to those comments and get more feedback to help in their decision making. So thanks for watching. Stay grounded. I'll see you in the next one.